10x your service design offering with Smapply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smapply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smapply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
It actually gets really interesting because most of the work that went into applied creativity after this, what the academics were really trying to do was, and they were largely academics, they were trying to establish repeatable processes. So in science, one of the things that defines the scientific process is that if you do it a second time, you'll get the same results. So reproducibility. And they were trying to do the same thing. And you get a lot of quite dense, thick, voluminous academic publications going through this, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it.
Hello and welcome to Bringing Design Closer on This Is HCD. My name is Gerry Scullion. I'm the founder of This Is HCD. I'm a designer, educator, design coach and podcaster, obviously based in the wonderful city of Dublin, Ireland. Now, our goal here is to have conversations that inspire and help move the dial forward for organisations to become more human-centred in their approach to solving complex business and societal problems. Now, in this conversation, I caught up with Zoe Rose of Great Question in Canberra. Zoe's based in Canberra, the capital of Australia, as we all know. We speak about the background and history of design methods, and we go as far back as 1950. Zoe is a well of information on this topic and proves to be a really fun and enjoyable exploration back in time. I know you're going to really enjoy it, so let's get straight into it. Zoe Rose, I am delighted to finally have you on the podcast. We've been messaging probably close to a year and a bit for, trying to work out a time and a schedule. For our listeners who aren't aware of Zoe Rose, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, Gerry. How are you? I am a UX designer based in Canberra in Australia. A little while ago, I shifted gears on my career to focus more on trying to get the next generations of designers up and running by turning my mind to workplace learning and design education. That has recently taken me into a Master's by Research at University of Technology, Sydney, where I'm looking at design capability frameworks, specifically in the Australian public service. And I have a range of really specific and annoying hobbies.
Yeah, go on. I can't leave you hanging on that. You have to tell me what they are.
All right. No, it's oddly wide and oddly specific. I do big bubbles. You know those big bubbles?
Yeah, I do. My kids love them.
Yep, I've been perfecting my own personal bubble recipe for the local climate for the last couple of years. I cook a lot of regional Chinese food. You can't just say you cook Chinese food because anyone who knows anything will just say, wow, but what region? So several, but my focus at the moment is Hunan because it's relatively less sophisticated in terms of complexity than some other areas.
So looking at that, like just on that point, like, with Chinese food, there's obviously lots of, different techniques and different methods that go into producing the cuisine. So we're going to talk a little bit more around your interest in multiple methods and also the origins of these things. I saw a segue there and I was going to jump straight on it. I could see a parallel between your interest in Chinese food and design methodologies. Tell me where that interest came from.
The interest in design methodologies?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's the designer's hunter instinct. Where you want to understand it and you want to understand it and you want to understand it and you want to understand it, and eventually that's going to take you backwards.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that I'm kind of learning, especially kind of emerging talent is probably a safer way of describing it. They seem to have maybe it's an academic thing. They don't really go back in time to really understand the origins of where things came from and understanding, what they were trying to achieve by these different methods. So how far back have you gone in your research in the historical kind of backgrounds in design methods? Back.
All right. I have two answers to that. One of them is a
Yeah.
really good punchline. So I'm
Go
going to
on.
hold it over.
I never say no to a punchline.
Okay. So, in terms of how far back do we go where it's a sensible place to start? I think
Yeah.
in terms of creative thinking methodologies, a sensible place to start is the 1950s, but more specifically the 1950s in America. Because what was
Okay.
happening in the night, yep. So what was happening in the 1950s in America was you had a surge of interest in trying to document and systematize creative thinking. And you had
Mm,
that coming up for a really specific reason, which is that
yeah.
for a little bit of the time there, it was starting to look like the USSR was going to win the Cold War.
What about going even further back? Because I remember when I used to
Mm-hmm.
do work for the RSA in London, and I held several events in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and we had fantastic speakers from UTS actually about Indigenous engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're from Australia, have you managed to go further back, like in time, rather than I guess the white perspective of like it began in the 50s in the industrial kind of the production age. Has there been any exploration down to the indigenous methods that they used way back before the white man took over their country?
So I'd be less inclined to think about Indigenous creative problem solving as being historical
Okay.
because Indigenous Australia is the oldest living culture on Earth. So
Yeah.
to regard that through the lens exclusively of history would be to not see a lot of the innovation that was current and alive and kicking now.
Okay. So we
So
will frame it from the 50s on.
depending on what you want to do and where you
Yeah.
want to go. We also have different sources of evidence that we can rely on for different stages of history and archaeology. Now, there's going to
Yeah.
be archaeologists out there who are going to be slightly annoyed at me for this oversimplification,
Yeah.
but the point at which cultures develop writing or choose to adopt writing, bearing in mind that not every culture that encountered writing actually chose to adopt it. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, that changes what we know. If you were exclusively walking through my house and the
Hmm.
only thing that you knew about this house was that it had coffee cups and chairs and an odd lump of metal that seems to have contained something at some point, that wouldn't actually tell you what I was thinking, doing, feeling, seeing, being, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's a I would be really hesitant about including uh, too much specific about Indigenous Australian culture into a conversation like this, just
Okay.
because so much is guesswork if we are looking into the deep past. And a lot of the innovation that's happening now is the kind of thing that people talk about.
Yeah. Like so,
Does that make
in
sense?
the 50s, what did it look like then in the
Mm-hmm.
US, as you were saying? So,
All right.
who was leading the way? Who was doing the interesting work in the 1950s as regards
Okay.
to progression of design methodologies?
Right. So the answer to that is going to annoy you more than you can possibly predict.
Starting to annoy me now. I'm joking.
The
Go ahead.
person who's actually doing a lot of the kickoff work around what will eventually emerge into academic research-based study of creative thinking is
Yeah.
actually the guy who came up with brainstorming.
All right.
Yeah, that
Who's
guy.
that?
Okay, so his name is Alex Osborne.
Right.
He's an advertising executive, like full. You've got to think like cigar chomping madman sort of a situation. Yeah,
Yeah. Alex
and
Osborne.
this.
I'm googling him here. Yeah.
So
He
the
looks
situation
like
he
a
found.
wild guy.
Yeah, no, like you've got like with the bristle cream through the hair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all of
Knows how to
all
party.
of that going on. So
This guy's
in
a
the
party man.
19 Yeah. In the 1930s, he had a advertising agency. The agency hit the skids. They were running out of money. He needed to do something relatively drastic. He came
Mhm.
up with an idea. There's little caveat hanging off of that. He came up with an idea. And he developed into the process, which he later wrote a book about, and that book was called Applied Imagination, 1953, and that introduced the world, or mostly America, to the process he came up with, which he called brainstorming. Now, if I had to ask you now, Gerry, what would you say that is? What is the brainstorming process?
Is getting everything laterally, everything that's on your mind that's interconnected to a subject onto a wall so other people can build on it.
Yep, terrific. That is universally the answer that I get, is some variation of that. Osborne's brainstorming process was actually a 3-step process.
Okay.
The first step was to get everybody into, for any given value of everybody, get everybody into a room and get them talking about a problem and just come up with as many ideas as they possibly could. Purely a numbers game. And he was very specific that you're not allowed to shoot anyone down. It's very much a yes and. We're just trying to get number as much as we possibly can about ways to potentially solve this problem. Step 2.
Right. Yeah.
Step 2 was just go away and not think about it for a day.
Okay, lovely. The subconscious plays into it then.
Pardon?
The power of the subconscious. You let the subconscious.
Pretty much. Like just let it gestate. Just let it gestate. And the third step was to come back later, hopefully after overnight, go look at all the ideas you had and narrow it down to the 1 or 2 out of the entire spread that might actually solve the problem or the problem area that you were already given. Now, we're designers, so we kind of recognize that, right? That's diverge, converge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's doing diverge, converge.
Yeah.
But he didn't come up with the idea of diverge, converge. Like, he didn't come up with the language of diverge, converge. That was actually someone who was doing research, another American, who was doing psychological research with pilots in World War II.
Right.
Because he was pretty sure that creative thinking, which he came up as diverge, converge, the kind of intelligence that goes in many directions. That's what he was looking for. He was pretty sure that was a better predicator of leadership than IQ tests. And he had a good reason for thinking so too.
Okay. On the Alex Osborne one here, just I see that he was actually the O in BBDO, the ad agency.
Was he?
Yeah, so I'm just on that point. I never realized that I didn't know who that was. In fact, I can't even remember the BBD, but the Osborne is the O in BBDO, the ad agency. I know them from London. I think they were in Australia. Or maybe they weren't in Australia. But anyway, that's so that was probably, what did you say? He was 1938, it says on the website that I'm in here. That was probably when he was born. Yeah. So it was in the 50s that he was working in this Think Up brainstorming method, was it?
So he started using it in his own business in the 30s.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book about it in the 50s.
Okay, so it was popularized then in the ad world, was it?
No, it went nuts. It was an airport book. It was the airport. It was the kind of fell into the same cultural category as Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or The Secret, or one of those books that everyone reads for a little while. But something that's really interesting is that even by the second edition, he's got an update. He's writing in the second edition, and he's writing in the second edition about how annoyed he is about all these people trying his process, doing it badly, and then saying it's a beat up. So like the rise and fall, the disillusionment with brainstorming as not actually being all it cracked up to be was already solidly in play within a couple of years.
Wow. So people were like, this is a load of crock of beep.
Yeah. Tried it, didn't work, ridiculous.
Yeah, because I remember like working in ad agencies in the mid 2000s, and they were like, okay, we're going to do a brainstorming session. I'm like, why would you bother? Like, this is, most people who've been through it just kind of go, like, there's not enough rigor in the process to really get something out that's of value. That's my perspective anyway.
But I'll bet you that you didn't do it the way that Osborne set it out, which actually was kind of rigorous.
Yeah, I love the fact that he left it for a day, ideally
Mm,
a night, to let the subconscious go. Because like one of my favorite videos is John Cleese, where he speaks about the power of the subconsciousness, and he tells the story of when he
mm,
was writing Faulty Towers, and he was going through one of his many divorces, and he had to leave the house. So read between the lines there, and he had the script, and he came back to it, and he couldn't find it.
hmm
And he was like, "Oh man, I need to get the script into the BBC for the Wednesday." And what he did was he wrote it from recollection, and that's the script that was produced for Faulty Towers, the one that's become a classic. And then it wasn't until several years later that he moved his desk away, and the bit behind the desk, he found the original transcript, and what he could see, that was the second draft, was considerably better. And from the time of writing the first draft to the second draft, the power of the subconscious was at play and was rewriting in his mind these loose ends in the script. And
mm.
that ultimately, as he says, the power of the subconscious, just leaving it, letting it sit and coming back to it with fresh eyes, is really, really rewarding. We probably don't do that enough in design, to be honest.
I tend to agree. There's a
Yeah,
lot of advantage in letting your mind sort something out
yeah,
while you go and attend to other things.
absolutely. Like drink wine. So, so let's say, so we've got Alex Osborne. He's up there on the board.
Mhm.
It's in the 30s, published in the 50s. What's the next method that in the longitudinal history of design methods by Zoe Rose? What's the one that what's the one that you're focusing on next to
Well,
give us a bit of
this
a
is
breath?
where it actually gets really interesting because most of the work that went into thank you um, applied creativity after this
Yeah.
and trying to create what what the academics were really trying to do was and they were largely academics. They were trying
Mhm.
to establish repeatable processes. So, in science, one of the things that defines the scientific process is that if you do it a second time, you'll get the same results. So, reproducibility. And they were
Yeah.
trying to do the same thing. And you get a lot of quite dense, thick, voluminous academic publications going through this, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it, and they don't quite get it. Something really turns the tables on all of this in 1971,
Yeah.
uh, which is slightly after Osborne, what should be Osborne's greatest moment, in my opinion, where you get a guy called Horst Rittel, Rittel, and
Hmm.
his collaborator, who I'm sure, because you're looking this up, you'll tell me his name in a second. I've just momentarily forgot it. And
Horst
they
Rittel,
come up,
Horst Willem Johannes Rittel,
huh? Horst
Horst
Rittel.
Willem Johannes Rittel.
Yep. And his collaborator. And what they come up with in 1971
Yeah.
is a phrase that we will all have heard. They came up with the wicked problem.
Okay. Ah, okay. The Wicked
Now,
Problem.
right.
So
So the wicked
Melvin Weber, is
problem,
it?
yep. There's a
Melvin Weber.
reason. Yep. So there's a reason why this became famous. The
Hmm.
reason why this became famous is that Riddle, through effectively applying maths, demonstrated that the efforts within this cohort to identify the one true reproducible process, which will always come up with a creative solution that works every single time, was
Mm.
intrinsically flawed, and that there exist in the world problems that provably cannot yield to a single process due to their inherent complexity. And that's what a wicked problem is. It's a problem that you cannot solve through the application of any process, no matter how good the process is.
Okay.
Now, something that I want to throw onto this topic is that Riddle, as you'll guess from his name, he was German and he was living in
Yeah.
America. He knew something that a lot of the American enthusiasts didn't. And we'll pause here just to note that everyone I'm describing here is pretty
Mm.
much like a white, well educated, north
After.
of North American man, like
Hmm.
across the board. And they
Yeah.
have the life experiences that are those of those people at that era. Horst has lived experience that they don't because Horst remembers World War II.
Mm.
And he has actually a very solid understanding of what can happen in circumstances where you try to apply what was called at the time a solution universally to a problem that's deemed to be complex,
Mm.
which is one of the ways in which we can describe the mass murders of Jews, gay people, transgender people, gypsies, Seventh day Adventists, and several other groups
Mm.
during what we now refer to as the Holocaust. So
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's a stretch involved in saying that problem solving methodologies have the potential to be used for evil.
Mm.
There have been many instances where we've seen problem solving methodologies used for evil. There is a
Yeah.
certain cultural tendency in design as it's currently practiced in the West, where you and I both are, to think of ourselves effectively as the good guys. And we always do the good things with our good methods.
Yeah.
Our methods are universally neutral.
Yeah.
And it is, I think more attention to the history of design, design methodologies, and the outcomes of design methodologies would be very good for us as an industry. Because every time that we do what you were describing before, avoiding history, seeing our methods as being ahistorical, acultural, acontextual,
Yeah.
uh, we put ourselves in a position where we can accidentally create risk.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that if you look historically over the last 25 or 30 years and the proliferation of design, that not every design has been created for good.
Mhm. Or used
Facebook,
for good.
Facebook, but
But you
sorry,
can
sneeze
design
there.
things with really good intentions that still end up hurting people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, looking at the most popular one to kind of poo-poo on Facebook,
Mm,
that was never created out of, kind of, I'm going to erode society and
mm,
really contradict democracy and trying to basically evoke evil in the world. That was never the mandate. You can just so easily see how it can just morph into a different direction. And they have great designers. They've had great designers involved in the team over the years, but yet they're in that situation now where most people would be not too sorry to see them kind of go down the Swanee. You know what I mean?
mm, mhm.
So looking at Wicked Problems, I always thought was Richard Buchanan was the originator of Wicked Problems in the 90s, but you're telling me now that that came from the 70s.
Oh, it's
So
all earlier than you think.
yeah, it is, isn't it? So that's why I had one eyebrow raised when you were like, and then of course Rittel and Weber. I've heard Rittel and Weber and I've seen them in papers and stuff. So I've shown my naivety. So that was in the 70s, and who was adopting the Wicked Problem? I hate calling that a method because to me it's more of a mindset that you're trying
Well,
to bring.
this is the really interesting thing.
Mm.
Now, I am just starting to look into this a bit as part of an aspect of some of my
Yeah,
master's research, and I'm here to tell you one of the really difficult things about trying to investigate a lost area of history is that
yeah,
some of it is lost. So it's a
yeah,
little bit harder. I mean, like if I was like learning all about Marie Curie, this would not be a problem. But it seems that the bafflingly, it seems that the wicked problems imposition
yeah.
actually succeeded to a huge extent, and a lot of the people who were interested in developing replicable creative thinking methodologies just went, "Oh, rubbish! That
Mm.
that seems it looks like he's right. Probably we can't do this." Now, there was one method that I'd like to turn your attention to from, I believe it was published in 1967,
Go
because
on.
this is relevant to every designer who's listening now. But we are unfortunately very deep in the weeds of things that are hard to track down.
Right.
So we've got uh, the guy who came up with Diverge Converge was called J.P. Guilford, and he's one of my favorite people in all of history. He's wonderful.
Mm.
He's given us Diverge Converge, and he is a psychologist. So,
New York.
yep, pardon?
He's from New
Yep.
York, wasn't he?
He's a psychologist. So
Yeah.
he is bringing the academic flavor. Osborne's bringing the corporate business flavor. We'll see this actually develop through the invention of business schools, which is going to happen over this era too. And by
Yeah.
the time we get to the mid 60s, we've got Osborne is working with Sydney Parnes, Parnes. Between the two of them, they come up with an institute for creative thinking, for teaching creative thinking. They do all sorts of fabulous stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the mid 1960s, Osborne actually dies.
Right.
Osborne, out of the two of them, really had the marketing flair. You'd expect that, him being an advertiser. So,
Yeah.
what I think is the most important thing that he eventually actually did has become a little bit lost to the sands of time because Parnes did not have that marketing flair. In
Mm-hmm.
67, they released the Osborne Parnes Creative Problem Solving Method. I think they call it a method. And what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting about this is that we've already established that with our brainstorming, we're using that diverge converge. Okay.
Yeah.
In the Parnes Osborne process, they're going to set out 5 steps. At this stage,
Okay.
Osborne is really annoyed that everyone thinks that brainstorming is a complete problem solving process, where as far as he's concerned, it's just part of ideation,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Okay. Yeah.
only one part of problem solving. He
Which we
and
know to
Parnes,
be
they're going to set out,
mid-process. Yeah.
yep, they're going to set out 5 steps
Right.
for creative problem solving. I'm not going to get them right off the top of my head, but you'll probably recognize them. I think it is finding the problem area, defining the problem area, coming up with solutions. Oh, this is annoying. I'm going to have to look up on my phone. And the last one is test. And those, they express each and every single one as being a diverge converge process. So, like little diamonds, like the double diamond,
Yeah.
5 little diamonds all on their side.
Yeah.
And those 5 steps map exactly to something we will all know very well, which is IDEO's 5-step
Oh
design
yeah.
thinking process.
You mean to tell me they didn't come up with that themselves? Oh my world is shattered. I don't believe you that they didn't. IDEO didn't come up with design. What?
No, they didn't.
Oh, your collective gasps. What? I don't believe you.
Crazy
They,
days, right?
they took something and claimed it for themselves. Wow. So I've got them here. The 5 steps here are when you click into Google, it gives you a different. So it's fact finding, problem
Yep.
finding, idea finding, solution finding, and acceptance finding.
There we go. You got it. That's the one. That's the 5. Yeah.
So it's a 5-step process
Mhm.
that evolved into a 6-step model afterwards
Yep.
by Parnes, which we spoke a little bit
Mhm.
about. So at this point, then you're looking at David Keeley at that stage in the '67 era, who went on with IDEO. What was his role? Because I know we joke. What was his role? Like, obviously he was absorbing an awful lot of this kind of work. I'm not dissing David Keeley completely, but there was an opportunity there that he saw, and he was like, "Well, we can commercialize this, and we can actually sell this." But how was he involved, or was he
Look,
involved?
I couldn't tell you directly, but
Mm,
I can tell you this. There is an uncanny parallel
yeah.
between Osborne's advertising agency collapse that he had to do something desperate about in
Okay.
1938 and
Right.
IDEO's response to the first dot-com crash of 2001.
Right.
Because IDEO, after the 2001 dot-com crash, they lost all their clients
Okay.
because they
Right.
went
Okay. That makes
bust.
sense. Yeah. That
And
that, that
what
makes sense.
year did they invent and start? Well, sorry, more specifically, what year did they start selling creative thinking services?
2001 was it?
It was also 2001. That's right. The
Yeah.
double the Design Thinking, the Five-Step Process was released by IDEO in 2001. So that
Okay.
point of pivot is an exact parallel to what happened to Osborne back in the day.
Okay. And at that point there, the design council were probably looking at the double diamond, which was from recollection 2005. Wasn't around that time?
Oh, I'm grinning ear to ear because I get to do like a bit of a mic drop. Yes, it was. And if you go onto the Design Council website and have a little bit of a poke around, there is a
Yeah.
testimony from the MD who delivered the double diamonds, where he talks about a conversation that he had a little while earlier about design process models with the person doing the same work at IDEO. And I think there's even a little throwaway line there that says, of course, kite-shaped design models have been used since the 1960s,
Hmm.
which is where we
What
see
was that?
our Osborne Parnes.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of the design council, the double diamond, that the double diamond and the IDEO 5-step process kind
Mm-hmm.
of go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? They are, well, they did. It's on their own public documentation
Yeah.
for the Design Council that they did collaborate on it. Basically, if you think of the double diamond as being a couple of diamonds, and you think of IDEO as
Yeah.
being 5 steps, the source text of Osborne Parnes is 5 diamonds.
Hmm. So there's a diamond. Well, yeah, the double diamond.
Yep. So you just split that in two. Design table takes the shape, and IDEO takes the steps, and here we are.
Yeah, which is the same. It's the same process. It's just,
It's exactly the
um,
same process.
yeah, it is. I was speaking to somebody before a couple of years ago in Australia, and I was like, "Well, you can have as many diamonds as you want." And I actually have an even better story in New South Wales
Mm-hmm.
government where I was trying to introduce them to service design thinking, and I could see there was a lot of puzzled faces in the room, like because they were like, "Hmm." And I came in the next day, and I am not lying when I say this, that the project manager had printed out the double diamond numerous times and was getting the scissors out, chopping it up, trying to figure out how to place the double diamond
Oh,
into their
bless
delivery process. And I'm like, that's not going to work. And they go, why? And I go, because you're just cutting squares out of paper.
Oh no. I Look, this is probably enough years ago that I'm safe to tell the story if I don't name
Yeah,
any names. I did once see an agency that shall remain unnamed
yeah,
deliver an artifact to a client that was showing off the results of their discovery research, where they had like they'd popped all the discovery research into the 4 quadrants of the double diamond.
right. Yeah, go
It
on.
was the weirdest thing you've ever seen.
I know, this could rapidly go downhill as a podcast where people just start kind of throwing their
No, we
eyes at
won't do
you
that.
and
We won't tell terrible stories all
superficial
day.
laughing. But like it's the double diamond piece is the one we like to say, like, there's probably some other stuff going on there, but it's done a huge service to the design industry. It helped catapult
Mm-hmm.
design into the conversations at the board level and was like, actually, you know what, there's a lot of value to this kind of thinking. What was it, do you think, that IDEO and even the design council as well, to some extent, what did they do better than say Osborne Parnes did with the 5-step model? Or was it just a case of right time, right place?
Marketing.
Marketing, do you
Yeah,
think?
I
But
would
there
say
must have been
marketing.
there must have been
So,
a piece there. It was like the Parnes and Osborne
mhm.
model, the world just wasn't really ready for it at that
Mm.
point. I can't.
Maybe, and also they were up against like uh, the revelation of the wicked problems that came immediately after. So I
Yeah.
don't think that this story is separable from the rise of business schools.
Mm.
Now, the interesting thing about a business school is that a business school is predicated on the idea that you don't have to understand any industry, that all industries are fundamentally the same. And if you understand some high level, decontextualized, general things about business, then you can run any business. Now, that's not entirely dissimilar from the way that we as designers approach things either.
Yeah.
I'm really quite surprised that we don't have more subject matter specialists who stay in their area of subject matter. I mean, I'm an education person.
Mm.
I think there
Yeah.
should be roles. I think that everyone would benefit from there being roles that were education design specific rather than people parachuting
Mm.
in and out of that field. So when we look at IDEO and what they did, they promulgated design thinking in partnership with
Mm.
Stanford's D School, right? Which is an offshoot of the business
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if we think back and remember that part of our source text here is military and is from military research, and I'd like to invite you to ask me more about that because it's fascinating. Part of it is from that military research with the pilots. Part of it is from that business book. So
Mm.
we can see in both those instances the organizational requirements are the ones that are doing the driving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think the D School partnership with Stanford was the thing that really cemented design thinking, not least because with such a good match with the offering that business schools already had. Learn some generic things, apply them anywhere. That's exactly what we do when we promulgate the design thinking process.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. There's food for thought there. I think everyone who's listening to this episode will probably be kind of going, we've learned something today about the origins. I'm thinking an awful lot. One of my favorite methods we haven't really covered off is Kano modeling,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe came from the Toyota
Mm-hmm.
school of thinking,
Yep.
by Noriaki Kano.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was in the 80s. So we've kind of jumped over the 80s.
Well,
But there's probably, I mean, we could do a whole day talking about this stuff. But
Kanban is the
um,
1940s.
Kanban,
Yep.
was it?
Yep. Toyota Corporation.
Was the 40s?
Yes, it was. It was,
Wow.
yeah, it was a post-war provision. So I believe McCarthy made an edict that Toyota Corporation wasn't allowed to build a car. They weren't allowed to build a certain number of things, and they almost went broke. So they had to get very, 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 very good at minimizing waste as fast
Yeah.
as they could. And those of you who are really familiar with Kanban will recognize that minimizing waste is intrinsic to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a 1940s technology. Mm-hmm.
It's a 1940s technology, but yet whenever I'm googling Noriaki Kano here, everywhere it says the 80s. It was developed in the 80s, so it was originated in the 40s and popularized in the 80s, perhaps.
Well, do you know
Um,
what, Gerry? If it turns out I'm telling you a lie, I will apologize 10 to 12 times over.
I want to see a public posting on LinkedIn apologizing for the miscommunication of the origination of the Kano modeling on the This Is HCD podcast with Gerry Scullion. And I want to see, an I apologize poster the size potentially about 2 meters wide,
Mm-hmm.
being held above your head. I'm only
Okay.
joking. But yeah, it is saying 1980s on
Mm-hmm.
Wikipedia, which we all know to be the ultimate source of truth for absolutely everything that has ever happened on this planet.
Sorry, is that
So,
Kayo or Kanban?
Kano.
Kano. Oh, okay, no. Kanban is the 1940s.
Kanban is the
That's the
40s.
one.
Okay.
Kanban. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kanban.
Mhm.
That's right. I knew that was also from Toyota, correct? Kanban was Toyota.
Yes,
Kano
Kanban
was
was Toyota. That's what they were doing. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
They've created some amazing stuff.
Mm.
Look, in the effort of trying to give people as much information as possible, um, I'm sure we could speak for another couple of hours on talking about the methods. I know you're working on a number of talks though, at the
Mhm.
moment. So if people want to reach out to you and learn more about when you're speaking, where you're speaking, what you're doing, What's the best way for people to get in touch with you and also learn more about your business? Great question, which is
Yep.
based in Canberra. Give us a shout out to how people can connect with you.
Fantastic. So I am at greatquestion.com.au. The training business that I run focuses on usability and accessibility, which I
Yeah.
think of as
Great areas.
usability for disabled people. I'm a
Yeah.
disabled person myself. So
Mm-hmm.
I help train people in getting their heads around things like design for disability, accessibility standards, content design, form design, all the stuff that you need to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Mhm,
we'd love to have you back on the podcast, Zoe, to
mhm.
talk about all of those things because they're really, really important conversations. And I know the listeners of This Is HCD will have found you great today, and also will love to learn more about those topics that you've just spoken about. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn on in the show notes for this episode, so you can connect with Zoe, ask Zoe questions. Are you on the Twitter or Mastodon? Have you moved over yet?
I am going down with the ship on Twitter, unfortunately. It's so
You are.
embarrassing to be me.
Down in a blaze of glory.
And
I left. I'm gone.
I will have a article coming out soon on the the website hosted by Dovetail, which we'll be
Okay,
talking
yeah, yeah.
about. But yep. So I've written an article for them, which is about a lot about what we talked about and how it relates to IQ testing and the misuse of data,
Ooh,
including in scientific racism and eugenics, again in the 1950s, mostly but
wow.
not exclusively in the United States.
Wow. All
Mhm,
right. Well, I'm on the Dovetail newsletter anyway, so I'm looking
mhm.
forward to seeing that. And if you do get a chance, send it across to me, and it could be something I pop into the newsletter as well for people on thisishcd.com. Sign up to the newsletter.
Fantastic.
So, listen, look, I've had an absolutely amazing time speaking with you today. I want to say a special thanks for giving me the time because I know it's your evening over in Australia. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me all the time and energy and the information as well.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Gerry.
And there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you enjoyed it and want to listen to more, why not visit thisishcd.com where you can learn more about what we're up to and also explore our courses whilst you're there. Thanks again for listening.